welcome to another episode of the Trailblazers Experience podcast. I'm really excited today to have my next guest. And my next guest is none other than Dr. Vanja Ljevar. I hope I've pronounced that correctly.
That's correct.
Beautiful, beautiful name, beautiful name. Welcome to the podcast, Vanja, and I'm really excited to have you here today. And before we get into the podcast, I always love to introduce our lovely guests so that everyone globally knows who you are and what you've done so far. So, Vanja is a chief data scientist, founder of Kubik Intelligence, and she describes herself as not only a data scientist, a serial entrepreneur, a public speaker, a published author, and also a University of Nottingham lecturer. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Exciting, exciting. So for those who don't know, because I'm such a geek, and for someone who works in fashion, retail, e-commerce background, just data is all we ever talk about. Tell me about your background and when did you realize your interest or gravitation towards science?
First of all, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. I think that really summarizes me. So data is definitely one of my greatest passions, but in fact, it's not my first love. My first love affair was with advertising and marketing. So my background is related to those fields. And actually, I realized through my work experience and education, I was always striving for quantifiable insights and just basically being able to make decisions based on numbers and facts. And I think this is what really drove me to explore the world of data a little bit more. I also have a lot of experience of, as I say, working in advertising. And when it comes to targeting, I think it's really important to just be really flexible, but also think about people as multidimensional personalities that are not only irrational sometimes, they're also driven by many different factors. And I think these are the things that we are just now starting to really implement in the world of business. Um, Up until some point in the past, we were making all these targeting decisions and marketing decisions based on these instincts and gut feelings. But I think one of my professors at uni said, we need to run in order to stand in one place. So with this whole advancements in the world of digital economy and everything that's happening around us, we are actually able to now capture more and more information about people. So everything around us is a digital footprint, and our every single activity that we have online and even offline is something that speaks volumes about us as people. And I think that's beautiful. Obviously, every single data source that we can use to describe people has to be really transparent and everything has to be ethical. However, it is also really like beautiful to understand that every single data point can actually speak so much about us, and all of that can be used then in making more clever and more intelligent decisions in the business. So that would be pretty much a summary of why I really got interested into data.
That's really interesting. So if some, teenage girl is listening right now and they're saying, well, so what was Vanya curious about just before, going into university that sort of led you to this point? What would you say to them?
That's a great question. I think that all our life experiences really shape us into being who we are as people. I had a very interesting, I would say, experiences when I was growing up. Some of them were not that positive. So the first 6 years of my life were I grew up in the middle of the civil war in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that for many people in my generation who grew up in that in that time, I think we really got marked in many subconscious ways that we are still discovering today, I guess. But what was interesting was that in the middle of that period, my father decided to open a cinema. And I thought that was so inspiring because I think he always thinks that there's an opportunity everywhere. And I think that's his life motto. So if he says, he would say, for example, if you're selling shoes and there's a country that doesn't have any shoes, many people wouldn't go there because there's no demand, there's no market. Whereas my dad would be, that's exactly where you need to go because you can actually show people that they're missing something that they're not even aware of. And so I think that's where that idea of starting the first multiplex in the Balkans came from. And I think that really informed my decisions growing up. So when I was 6, somebody asked me what I wanted to do when I grow up. And I said, I wanted to be a director. And I just thought about that recently, actually, because I didn't know what that meant. I just knew
Mhm.
that's a thing. That means you're running a company, I guess. But then when we started Kubik Intelligence, I opened the letter one day and it said, "Congratulations, you are a director of a company." And I thought, this is such a full circle. So that is definitely yeah, all those experiences really informed my progression in life, I guess, like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, I mean, such a great story, even to share that, through adversity or anything that you've gone through, you have been determined, you've been focused, and the example of your father saying you should always see where the opportunity is, and that's probably what you've sort of done without even knowing it in your life. That's the thread that has sort of, helped you and guided you in your journey. So thank you for sharing that. That's really interesting. What led you to start your business?
Um, I think I was always a very entrepreneurial person. I think at any point in my life, I had at least 6 business ideas in my brain. So, and I was really lucky that when I had a job in a company, uh, for any of them, I always had this massive flexibility and um, I was always able to lead the team, or I never had somebody who would micromanage me or say, these are the things that you need to do today. So, for example, when I finished my master's in marketing at the University of Nottingham, I applied for only one job and I got that job. And that was a very fascinating story in itself because it was so highly unbelievable that that happened because my country is a non-EU country.
Mm-hmm.
So I I would probably have to go through many hoops and find a company that's willing to sponsor me and all of these limitations. So that was really really cool that I got that job, and it was in at that point the largest independent uh, advertising communications agency in London. So that was a huge change for me. I moved to London. I was very young. I was just full of life and ready to explore everything. But the job in itself was very specific. I had 3 or 4 bosses, I would say, but I was working alone and I was my own team. And
Mm-hmm.
it was a project called Knowledge Transfer Partnership. So it was a collaboration between a university and a company in the market. So the idea was to bridge the gap between academia and industry. So there was a lot of flexibility. I could uh, create ideas to help advertising using data. Um, so yes, I really look fondly at that project that really just, I think, really informed my career as a data scientist. I've learned a lot, and then in the next job, I was basically leading a team of data scientists. So again, I had a lot of freedom, uh, created a whole reporting system. So I guess I never, in my corporate life, I never really had anyone to, you have to do this, you have to work 9 to 5, just work 24/7 now. So that's not great either.
Yeah,
So
that's very interesting that you said about because I'm sure people who are watching globally, honestly, Vanya, they're probably facing the same as well, where they'd love to work in different countries, but the hurdles of visas and sponsorships, sometimes that actually stops them from applying for the job of their dreams that they're probably qualified for. But I think a major lesson is just to do it, to go for it, to apply. What's the worst that can happen is that you don't get it, or actually you do, and then it shapes and builds the trajectory for the rest of your life as well.
absolutely, completely agree. I think one of the main things that I always say to people is, do the scary thing first, get scared later, because
Yes.
what's the worst thing that can happen? I mean, you miss every shot you don't take.
Yeah, definitely, definitely, definitely. So talk to me about, if someone is listening and saying, if you were to describe what a data scientist is, how would you describe it in layman's terms?
I would say data scientist is somebody who uses data to help businesses and companies make decisions more intelligently. Data science is a field that's relatively new, which is good and bad because there's been obviously the explosion of the data, and we have a whole new discipline created almost every new day. Uh, but some of the techniques used in data science are still relying on very traditional statistical methods. It's just a slightly different perspective. So data science in itself is, I would say, a composition of many different things, many different skills that you need to have. And some of them are not even related to coding or anything mathematical. So I would say you would probably have to have some understanding of statistics and mathematics because that's what you need. Then there is a lot of data cleaning in my everyday job, which people normally don't talk about because it's not interesting or sexy, but this is pretty much 80% of my work.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be, so I would say you need a lot of patience. You need to
Yeah.
be attached to details, but you also need to be able to see the big picture and to understand what kind of task are you actually trying to fulfill. So that's one of the skills I think that's really needed to be able to communicate clearly the end results of your findings, and then obviously data visualization and all of that is meant to support that. So that's how I would summarize it.
Really good. I read a recent research that said, so they surveyed 10,000 business leaders by Salesforce and found out that 30% of business leaders are overwhelmed by the volume of data they have in their businesses, and 33% lacked the ability to derive insights from it. And you've just summarized, there's always all this data, but actually, what are you trying to say? What's the message that you're trying to communicate? And how are you trying to use it is really a big thing. I mean, I see it in my organization is we have so much data, but we have to actually say, why does this matter? What's your why? So what? And then take it from there within the organization.
I think that's exactly the whole point. There was a fun story that I read recently. I'm really big into these data stories that I sometimes publish on my LinkedIn profile, but it's almost like a sarcastic story written ages ago, and it's a story about a person who wanted to make a really good map, like a geographic map,
Mm-hmm.
and every day they would add a little bit more and more detail into this map to make it really correct. And then at some point, they ended up with a map that was of the same size as the city they were mapping. So it was one to one. And it was such a beautiful illustration. I think it's the same with data. We we can definitely do like an overkill with data collection. It
Yes.
really is important to understand, first of all, what do we want to measure and
Mm-hmm.
what is our big business goal. I say that companies either, I don't say, I stole it from Seth Godin, who is one of the marketing strategists. So basically, we can either measure love or sales or
Mm-hmm.
both, but the business usually focuses on one of these two things. And then that really dictates what kind of measures, what kind of KPIs you're going to follow, what reports are going to be created. And ultimately that really dictates what kind of data sources you should explore. So that's the first thing when I come to a company that doesn't have any data. I love to say they can behave like a three-legged dog because three-legged dogs are happy as they are. They just run around. They don't think they're missing anything. But in fact, when we show them that they can be doing better and using data to help their business decisions, very quickly data becomes the heart and the soul of the company.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think
Definitely.
it's really important.
Yeah. So let's talk about Kubik Intelligence. I'm on the website right now and it says we use data science to unlock the secrets of your customers' minds. We use data science to unlock the secrets of your customers' minds. Talk to me about why you started the business, and how's it doing? How's it going?
So I am very, very proud of the work we're doing at Cubic. I think it's started as an idea because Patrick Fagan, who's my business partner, he's the chief behavioral scientist in the company. And we realized that we both share this passion for understanding and analyzing people, but we're coming from two different angles. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
using data and he's using psychology. And we have a very unique, I would say, an edge in our company because not many companies really combine data and psychology in the way that we do. We And I think that's one of the biggest advantages. We basically use data science and behavioral science to profile customers and then create recommendations. So the reason why I think data and psychology are a great match is because while data can respond to questions about what, psychology can help us understand the how.
Mm.
So I think that's the reason why we're both really excited to do interesting projects, to work with amazing brands, and I think the most rewarding thing of all is once we actually create uh, our recommendations and help companies really um, understand their customers, where they're coming from, and their psychological profiles, we are then able to tell them who to target and how, and then we
Mm.
can see the results. Because the recommendations that we make are, I would say, uh, are optimal personalization of communication, of the engagement. And then that can lead, based on one of the research that I read, up to 40% of conversion rate increase because we are just naturally more prone to communication that is was the word that is very relevant to us, familiar to us. We're more prone to listen to brands that are basically able to cut through the noise. That's why we have some great results with our work.
Yeah. Oh, that is so interesting. So talking about the fashion or the retail industry, so some of the most successful companies, I know, and probably the audience knows, are the ones leveraging data science and behavioral science. So we know Zalando is a tech company that uses data. Farfetch is a tech company that does fashion. Both successful, I think, due to their problem solving approach. And obviously they continue to innovate and push the barrier. Levi's, I was reading the other day, has its own AI bootcamp where they're focused on trying to teach data science to their employees. So, just on that note, Talk to me about some of the work that Kubik Intelligence has done in the industry. So most recently, I've read the lipstick case study, but do you want to talk about that?
Yes, absolutely. I think some of the pieces of work that I'm most proud of are when we're actually able to extract psychology from data. So as I mentioned, we can we can leave these uh, I would say little traces that can inform about our psychology through the way that we communicate with others.
Mm.
So, in our text or even in the way that we do our shopping. And I think for the longest time, ever since I was in academia, I had this really, really strong interest in extracting psychology from transactional data. So, and I was specifically during my PhD focused on these social good projects. So, understanding, for example, the level of anxiety based on patterns in the shopping basket, uh, because we can detect these concepts based on what people buy. And in one of my favorite parts of research, we were looking at menstrual poverty, actually,
Mm.
which is such a, I would say, still up today in a way stigmatized question. But we are actually able to extract the prevalence of menstrual poverty based on the data that, from transactional data and so on. Um, so I would say in that vein, one of my favorite projects that we did with Kubik was to actually identify not only the patterns in customers' behaviors and predicting who is going to leave the company and so on, we can also understand, based on these novel methodological strategies in data science, what are the features that actually drive certain behavior. So if we know that, for example, somebody really likes to buy a certain type of lipstick, we can actually see what are the main features that are predictive of that kind of behavior. We can find that they could be going through a specific life event, or they belong to this particular age range, or they are really, I don't know, into ecology or something like that. And then these things can really inform the way that we talk to that person. So that's pretty much what I was really interested in.
Yeah, I mean, just circling back, it's interesting because we probably live in the first world where consumers and beauty is a very big focus. What you look like, how you should dress, and etc. But tackling things such as menstrual poverty is if we can use data science to tackle that, understand where, how. And probably providing solutions that would be a massive breakthrough, I think, in the femtech, especially sectors as well. What challenges have you faced in your career, Vanya, that, maybe there's some lessons learned that you'd love to share?
Absolutely. Many challenges,
A
I
lot
would
of
say.
regrets.
um, I would say one of the things that I was thinking about when I was thinking about this question was, um, somebody asked me once, would you rather be liked or respected in a
Mm,
company? And I think it's very typical for women to, especially for women, I think, to want to be really liked. And, we're constantly told smile more and be nicer and be more agreeable and all of that. But when I first responded to that question when I was in my 20s, I think I really wanted to be liked. Whereas now I think I would respond differently. I would want to be respected. And I think that just comes with, creating through all of my experiences and in growing confidence and all of that. But yes, definitely one of the main challenges I would say for not just me, pretty much many of the women that I speak to, is that imposter syndrome and just the need to prove ourselves, and maybe not even making that leap because we're not sure if we have enough knowledge. There's never enough knowledge, there's never enough strength or power and just the fear in general. So that would be one. And I guess for me specifically, another challenge was just adapting to all the cultural differences in
Mhm.
countries where I lived and worked. So I moved to Serbia when I was, I think, 18 to do my studies there. And even though they're neighbors, I think there's still a lot of differences between Bosnia and Serbia. But then coming to England, that was the whole new level of the game. And it took me a long time to, first of all, learn what to say when people ask me how I am, because I would normally start with, well, I'm having a little headache, or, and then somebody told me, no, you're just meant to say, good, you. It's a small talk, no one cares.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's just things like that. And especially, I think, in the business communication, the way that you're meant to, my language is very, very metaphorical and very, I would say, emotional and beautiful. Uh, and then I used to literally translate some things from my language into English. Like I wouldn't say things like, oh, this would take a day. I would say it would take a life cycle of a butterfly, which is
And
a
everyone's
day.
like, "What? What's going on here?"
So it was really hard for me to break that direct translation point in my head and just
Mhm.
become, okay, I'm going to just use metaphors in a very plain way.
Yeah, break it down, simplify it. Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. It's that you've mentioned that. So I'm originally Zambian, and I've lived in Zambia. Then I've lived in Germany. Then lived and worked in Germany. Then moved to the UK. I mean, if you talk about three different cultures, how one communicates, meanings of things, it's been a big adjustment. But I guess you adjust, isn't it? Because you do want to be able to blend in the country that you're in. And talking about imposter syndrome, we as women, I think in general, just share that as well. I always wanted to be liked at the beginning when I was very young, and now I just want to be respected, because I think being liked, but if you're not seen and heard when you're in a room or in a meeting, that is the worst feeling ever, because you start thinking, oh, I thought that person liked me, but they've just made you feel like crap. So you sort of think, no, I'd rather be respected. We can deal with all the politics of whether you like me or not later as well. Have you read the book A Seat at the Table by Sheryl Sandberg?
Oh, I heard of it, but I haven't. I would love
Yeah, so honestly, if it's, if you're ever, interested in reading or even Audible, just say she's really talking about her challenges rising in a career, and how when you're at the table, when you're in a meeting, when I was younger, I used to go into meetings, and if there was a table, I'd sit all the way at the back. And it's just that imposter syndrome saying, oh my God, if I'm in the front, A, do I deserve to be there? Is it reserved for certain people only? But no, take that seat at the table, make your voice heard. If you have something to contribute, contribute. If you have something to ask, ask.
Mhm.
Because you always think that people at that table know everything, but they actually don't. So that was a big lesson as well.
Absolutely. I completely
Yeah.
agree. But I think that like many other things, it comes with experience and just being exposed to many when you realize people are just people and yeah, what's the worst thing that can happen if you speak up?
Yeah, definitely. And also maturity. I think as you evolve in your career, you learn different things as you progress to different levels of your whether it's business or professional life, you sort of take the lessons learned from your youth
Mhm.
and learned to actually, mold, adapt to the situations that you're in. I think that's the whole idea, is you're never going to be the same person that you were 10 or 15 years ago. Your values may have changed as well. So let's talk about values and work ethic. What are your values, Vanya? And talk to me about your ethic as well.
Well, I would say I've worked really hard my whole life to be where I am now, and and I don't mean that even as it is a positive thing in a sense. I was able to accomplish many things, but I think at some point you sort of realize you really have to really take care of yourself. And then
Mm.
I think my values really changed. I think especially in my 30s. Um, when I started the company, I actually spoke to many people, and I would ask them for just one advice that they would give me. What would be one thing that you would advise me to be mindful of, or whatever? And it was fascinating to hear that people, because this is, if I'm asking for only one thing, that means this is the most important thing for you.
Yes.
And people would say this whole range of things. One person said that one of the main things was to delineate between your identity as a business person, as somebody who is career focused, and your identity, your other parts of your identity, as a partner, as a friend, as a daughter, and all of that.
Mm.
So I think that was one of the hardest lessons for me to learn, because I would just continuously think about my work all the time, and that impacted, just my well-being, I guess, at the beginning. And then I had to take a break and just, reconsider all of these things. So I would say now there's a I really try to make a balance between self-care but also self-pity, if that makes sense in many ways, because
Mhm.
I'm trying to be very gentle to myself, but I'm also trying to be okay. If things are not working, there's no point in, you know, just feeling marinating in self-pity. We should just move forward. Um, so yes, I think limitations are my greatest value. Just not sorry, not limitations, just the boundaries and limits that,
Mhm. Mhm.
that you create around what you care about, what's stopping you from development, and all of these things. Uh, and then I guess one more thing that I would like to mention that I was just reflecting on recently was, when I was growing up, I was always told that if something is uh, made by somebody else, there is no reason why you would not be able to do the same thing. So in psychology, it's called self-efficacy. So I think that I have a really strong self-efficacy. I really trust that I can learn anything there is, if it's how to fix a car, to machine learning, to anything there is. But then when I started working at Kubik, this really made me reconsider this idea recently, because I think just because you can do anything, sometimes it doesn't mean that you should, if
Mm.
the trade-off isn't good. And I think that's when I developed as the business person. So, for example, I am not a salesperson, and everyone who knows me, I'm not. I really care about, I'd rather make a friend than make a
That is
sale.
hell.
And it really took me a long time to, when I was reading books about it, and I was like, I can totally become this person. Until one day I realized, well, I mean, I can become this person, but it will take me 3 years probably. I'd rather just hire an agency that will help me do this job. So that's what I'm talking about. It's just because I have this idea that I can do anything in the world. Sometimes we just need to delegate.
Oh, for sure. I mean, focusing on your strengths, is, and like you said, you're running your own business now. If you're not the greatest salesperson, hire someone who can, or outsource, I think is a big one. But you know what? You touched on one thing a few minutes earlier about you have worked so hard. I mean, your resume is just bigging you up now, Vanya.
Thank you.
Is beautiful. It's formidable. I mean, from a Bachelor of Engineering, Masters of Science, Computer Science, Psychology. You are a doctor. You are a lecturer. You've now launched your own business. It's really just a testament to your hard work and just showing interest in the things that you wanted to do and just keep moving forward. So on that level, I think it's important to showcase that for some young girl out there who is probably following the same career path. I know, for example, Vanya, my sister, is doing a PhD. I think she's been studying for almost half my life. But I said, it will be worth it. It will be worth it in the end. And, focusing on your studies is also something important. It allows you then to do other things as well. But good lesson there on self-efficacy. And also you may want to do everything, but delegate if you can, so you can focus on your strengths.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Talk to me about self-care. So you've talked about your professional life. How do you take care of you? What is, if I was to say three things about you that I don't know that are in your private life? I saw something about being a jazz enthusiast, but I don't know if there's more to that. Tell me about
I,
self-care.
yes, I actually like to listen to jazz when I'm working, but I realize it's because there's no words. I can't listen to music that has lyrics while I'm working. It just completely distracts me. Um, but yes, I think it's really important to, at least for me, to develop routines and
Mm,
stick to them. So, for example, I start every single day with half an hour with my coffee, and I do morning journaling a lot. This is something that I just absolutely have to do. And even if I travel somewhere, I still try to bring my little journal. I just think it's really important to have that time for yourself, and then also not lose track of interests that we always had even as kids, maybe follow them up. So I would say yes, just I think one of the main things that is a part of my self-care is maintaining relationships, and this is something that I am really proud of, that I was able to maintain the groups of friends that I have across the three countries where I lived. I think it's one of my greatest achievements, because I really strongly believe that relationships are like a living organism, like a plant. You need to water it, you need to put in the work. So yes, definitely these connections are something that can be so nurturing. When you don't know what to do, some people will just be able to, help you, even if it's just a hug or just a nice word. That can be so helpful. So that's a huge part of my self-care routine, I would say.
Oh, brilliant. I love the jazz element. And just, like you said, looking after those different friendship groups, your close little nuggets, your close circles that help you and remind you of who you are and allow you just to step away from your professional life, I think is really important. So for those out there, if you don't have a friendship group, try and build one, make a friend. And they don't have to be interested in the same things that you're interested in as well. That's one thing I learned over time.
Absolutely, and I think that's the safety net almost in a way, because I mean I find the the friendship, the friends that I have, they're so inspiring, and we're all in very different
Yeah.
areas. We work, but at the end of the day, we share the same values, and in my case, I'm so internally grateful to my partner, who is, well, now my fiance, who is such a great, the rock for me, really supportive and helpful. So I think these are the things that I'm very almost like relying on in my life,
Mm,
because if I am having, somebody once told me, one of my friends, that all these relationships, there should be like an oasis. So that means that, life is already difficult. I don't want to worry about my partner or my friends. I just want to have a place where I go and have fun, and then deal with the work and everything else. So I think
yeah.
that's such a crucial thing.
Yeah, you're right. So good relationships shouldn't be hard. There'll be
Yeah.
challenges, but they shouldn't feel hard, in that regard.
Yes,
So
exactly.
we know, or I know from the industry I work in, that data scientists are now sought out by retailers, tech, e-commerce businesses. And I read in an article that was published a few years ago that someone said, data is your friend, has no ego, and will never steer you wrong. Do you think this is true? And if so, why?
That is so interesting. Data is your friend. I mean, um, Coming from now, I'm putting my academic hat on. I think
Yeah.
with all the advancement in the technology, uh, it is possible to sometimes feel like we are constantly observed, and that creates that fear in people. So some people may feel that data, just because it's there, they don't want to share it, and they have the full right to not share it. The privacy is obviously important.
Mm.
Um, so it can definitely be useful. I mean, just reflecting on all the variables and all the data that we can collect about ourselves. For example, the watch, you can follow your steps and all of that. So there's that whole um, self-tracking, I would say, paradigm that exists right now. You can see how long you slept and how many calories you had and all of these things. But I think at some point it can become a little bit overwhelming,
Mm.
and at least I think it is for me. So from that perspective, I think maybe, we shouldn't really worry too much about data. We should, obviously be aware of how it's used, and we should maybe even try to raise our voices against some of the gaps that exist in the ethic, the rules and law that are not continuously following the advancements of tech in the right way. So we should stop, the abuse of data in that way. But at the same time, Patrick and I are actually preparing this amazing project for SMR this year. This is a conference happening in Amsterdam this year. And for that project, I did this really cool thing where I pulled all my data from all the different data sources that I could find. So I got my whole Facebook history, Instagram, every single information from my watch about my steps, my sleep, and all of that. I got my whole Netflix history, everything I ordered on Amazon. That was scary. I did not realize I spent so much money on Amazon. And I think Tesco or something else, and location and financial data, everything. And then I was able to actually detect some of the things that I was not even aware of. So I learned things about myself and about my personality. For example, I found
Please
out that
share something. What did you learn?
I felt this is so scary. So for example, that like I would feel there would be a night out. For example, I could see like on my financial, like you went to this bar, to that bar, to this bar, had dinner with friends, and then that would be, for example, on Saturday, and then on Monday morning I would, with no exclusion, always go for like this ultra healthy lifestyle, running for 5K, or, I'm really mindful about what I buy in Tesco's, God forbid something caloric. But I had like this whole weekend of basically just doing everything and anything. So it's really interesting. And that pattern just kept reappearing. I think the data, the period I was looking at was just after COVID. So it
Mm.
was kind of understandable. But yeah, and then I was just, it's so fascinating. And then I also learned that on Netflix, I only watch psychological thrillers. I'm so boring. There's literally nothing else that I am interested in.
That is so interesting. Well, if I was to do the same with myself, I think my interests or my patterns and trends have evolved over time. So, depending on when I was not married, before I had children, now I have children, now I'm focusing on health and wellness. I think you'd see cycles, but I think there's one constant. My wine consumption and taste for good wine. So you can see all the places I would.
This is exactly what I mean. Yeah, so I mean, to circle back, I think in that sense, if we're able to gain insights from the data we're collecting, and that can inform us how to be better at life, I think then data is definitely your friend.
Yeah. But then I think it comes down to the importance of your own business is you're using data and psychology, which I think is a very good combination because you're not just focusing on one thing, you are also, thinking about how humans actually behave and the insights behind that, which makes complete sense. So what's next for you? If I caught up with you, which I will in a few years' time, what is Vanya up to in her business? Where do you see yourself?
Uh, it's a great question. I think I try not to plan too much.
Hmm.
I would definitely like to explore my business ideas and just to see how far I can go with starting a couple of businesses. Um, I have an idea for a couple of apps that I'll try to create this year. And I would really love to, I mean, I don't know, in 5 years, I would probably love to actually maybe even move. I always had a feeling that I don't really belong to one single country. Uh, it's, I think, coming from Bosnia and Herzegovina, it's a very common, complicated feeling around that. But I
Mm,
think it's also great. As my dad said, that's also an opportunity. So that means I can have more homes than
yes,
one.
definitely. Yeah.
I would love to have another home, maybe somewhere warmer.
Yeah. I mean, a modern day nomad, that's a good aspiration, moving
Yeah.
and exploring other countries too. Talk to me about networking and how important that is, especially now as a business owner and working with your co-founder as well. How important is networking in your role?
I think it's very important. I think it's one of the main lessons that, or tips that I could give to somebody who wants to start a business. It's so important to make connections with people, and you never know, even if things don't work out at the beginning, with some of these connections, you really need to uh, just stay connected, and you never know what door may open. But for me personally, I think I learned a lot about myself when I started networking, going to networking events. Just as any other thing, I thought to myself, I hate it, but I can be great at it. So I remember it was actually not that long ago. There was a networking event that I was going to, and it was in this restaurant, and it was down, you have to go down the stairs and then like go left or whatever. And I was not in a good place that day because I was tired. I was like, the last thing I want to do is now talk to people. But I like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm here, so let's just do it. And I remember like I had to go down these stairs, and I remember that scene from Titanic when uh,
Yes.
when what's her name, Rose, got the axe, and now she needs to save Jack and go, like, there's these stairs and they're filled with water, so she needs to basically dive in. That's how I felt. Literally felt like, oh, I need to now like dive in. And then I was there at that event for maybe 10 minutes, and I just, like, after 10 minutes I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. I met some amazing people. So that's pretty much one of the biggest lessons I learned. No matter how build how much you build it up in your brain that it's going to be really difficult and hard, you really never know who you can meet, interesting people. I think just the passion to actually meet people and try to help them and see how I can be helpful to others is actually the reason why I started my company. So yes, that's why I keep, saying to myself every time when I don't feel like networking, I was like, well, you never know. At the end of the day, you can always have a glass of wine and go home.
Yeah, exactly. And it's so interesting. We all, it's good that you've shared that. And I hear that a lot from the women who I've spoken to, that everyone has this feeling, inside of them of, oh my goodness, what if nobody talks to me? What if I don't know what to say because it's an unknown? And that's okay. I think the main message is everyone out there, get out there, network. There's nothing to lose. But what's so interesting is, because you are into public speaking as well, do you find it's a different thing? Because with public speaking, you're in a way you're in control. it's your topic. You're sort of leading what you're going to say. There's a bit of prep. And usually when there are questions, everyone's is very respectful. So, and, unless there's someone who's asked something that you were not anticipating, but the chance of that happening is usually less than 2%, let's say, throwing out numbers out there. But it's a different feeling, isn't it? Because people would think public speaking is harder than networking. I think networking is harder. I don't know what you think.
That's a really interesting debate. I don't know. I think public speaking can have challenges, but I think that really depends on the context. Like, I don't
Mm.
feel, I think I lost my nervousness to do public speaking when it comes to, when I'm doing teaching or engaging with somebody that I can help with my knowledge. I think that's very different again. But I had a situation where I was presenting work related to behavioral science.
Mm.
Um, and it was in a room full of behavioral scientists, and I was so nervous because I am a data scientist. Yes, I love psychology. I read about it, but that's not my specialty. So I was really worried that if I stray even a little bit from the topic I'm talking about, if they ask me something, I will not know.
Yes.
But in the end, I actually managed to, it was great. So, yes, I think it just really depends on the context. But networking is a different beast in itself because I guess you just need to win, you need to win over your initial fear of just getting there. And
Mm.
then I remember at the beginning, I would comfort myself by saying, look, you can come to this event. And because this is your first networking event, you don't need to do anything today. You can just, the only goal is to survive. So if you come to that door and you stay for half an hour only and you say, okay, I've given my all, then you can leave. That's the conversation I would have in my head. And then that goal started increasing from one networking event to another. Now I have like slightly higher expectations, but I'm still being very reasonable. Like, you don't have to stay in a place you don't feel comfortable in. I mean, you can give it a go, but I always find that I do stay because there's always somebody I can speak to. So it's just that initial fear, I think.
Yeah.
Um,
Getting over that first hurdle. Let's talk about mentoring. Are you a mentor? Are you being mentored? What are your thoughts of that? Do you have a mentee?
I did actually speak to several students because, because of I was doing some guest lecturing at the University of Nottingham, and I'm always more than happy. I think, especially with data science, because it's such a new field, there is a lot of um, unknown.
Mm.
Companies don't understand what are the boundaries between data roles. For example, they would think that data engineering is the same thing as data science, which is like biology and chemistry.
Mm.
Yes, they do overlap in some ways, but I mean, because there's all of these different problems in our field, people expect a lot from graduate students, for example. So I always felt like it was my duty to tell students that they should be really clear about their own boundaries. They should ask for a specific amount of money, because sometimes I think in the field people want you to wear seven different hats and still earn the money as the intern. So I
Yeah.
think everybody should be, my really strong belief is that everybody should and deserves to be respected and valued for what they bring to the table. So in that sense, yes, I've spoken to many people. I personally don't have a mentor, even though I would love to. There's a couple of people I speak to when I don't know what to do. Um, I really, but these are all the people from different fields, so nobody will ever actually come to me and say, this is what you need to do. I actually saw a meme recently where somebody who's in your teenage years, you say to your parents, don't tell me what to do. And then when you're 30s, tell me what to do. And this is how I felt sometimes. I just want somebody to tell me what to do.
Yeah, yeah, that's so interesting. There's another meme that I read where it says, you never, everything that our parents said were going to happen in terms of don't do this, don't do that is happening now. I just want to call them. Can they tell me what's going to happen in the next 10 years so I can just prepare for
Absolutely.
it as well. But you touch on a very important point. It's really formidable that you are speaking to students, graduates, and giving them the tools to say, know your worth in the job role that you're applying for. Be clear on what exactly a data scientist is, if that's what you're applying for. And I think it's very good because we don't want people spend all their years studying, acquiring knowledge, or even have a skill set. Even if you've been an entrepreneur all your life, people should be paid what they're worth. It's very important for sure.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, but I would definitely love to find a mentor, somebody who will be able to. As I said, I started actually writing down all the advice that I got when I started my company, and I'm hoping that at some point I may be able to turn it into some sort of a book or something, because it's so fascinating how so many people they gather this knowledge and
Mhm.
they want to share it. So I think it's a shame that we don't ask for advice more than we do. Sometimes we just want to think we can do everything on our own, and that's great. But yeah, we should be able to reach out. You can always learn something from everybody. That's what I believe in.
Definitely, definitely. Let's talk about apps. So, I'm always very interested speaking to different people about, what applications do they have on their phone. So, do you want to share maybe two or three apps that you use that you think are worth knowing? Maybe they're new ones, maybe they're standard ones. What are three apps that are the things that you're dealing with at the moment that you think are interesting?
That's a great question. I would say, well, first of all, my personal opinion about apps, I think there's now so many. I sort of found myself at some point where I had to just completely clean my phone and just like disconnect from everything, like a
Yes.
digital detox. But actually, one of the ones that I really like is um, it's an app called Mindshine, and
Mm-hmm.
it's basically an app that can help you navigate your day. It gives you tips what to do when you wake up, and I'm really trying to follow up. So it's like a combination of do like a quick exercise, drink water, and all of these other things. And then there's a couple of meditation exercises and all of that. And I just really love that app. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, yeah.
That's one. And then the one that I recently joined with my friend, a CrossFit, and I'm preparing for what's the word, Tough Mudder, which
Mm-hmm.
is, I don't know if I'm just crazy or because
You're gonna love it.
I am so scared. I don't know. Have you ever done it?
Well, I've done Spartan, which is also a form of obstacle course racing, and I was also so scared because I was like, I don't know what this is going to be about, but I loved it. Are you doing it as an individual or as a team?
So we're doing it as a team, but everyone in my team isn't. I don't think they're taking this seriously. So I'm like, how am I going to? I'm going to be the most fit person, and I'm not helping anyone.
Oh,
Not
that's the role
doing
you're taking on. Yes.
it.
Oh, that's interesting. So you've downloaded an app sort of to help you with your
Yeah.
with your training for that as well. Yeah,
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 exactly. Just following a little bit. I mean, it's just interesting. I'm trying not to be overly critical. Like I'm taking, every day as it comes. So if I don't feel like going to training, I don't. But that's the thing that I'm trying to balance self-pity and self care. So I'm trying to exclude self-care from that voice can be really useful when you're doing something difficult and you're like, it's okay if it doesn't work out. That's the kind of a voice I'm using. But
yeah.
that voice should not come with me to the gym, because then I say to myself, you don't need to do 50 squats, you can do 20. It's okay.
No, it's a different mindset. It's a different mindset when you're training. You just need to get it done. You just need to get it done. But I love the first app that you mentioned, because there's been a lot in the news, on podcasts about, self-care, and some are maybe a bit extreme than others, but self-care really starts with the bit, simple things. I had someone on the podcast last week or a few weeks ago who was talking about, just taking a walk, committing to taking a walk for 10 minutes. Is something simple, and starting small. Not saying I'm going to walk for an hour, but 10 minutes, because 10 will turn into 15 to 20 to 30, etc. So if you can have an app that prompts you to invest in certain little things in your life, then that's a way to start. And I guess that's the brilliant thing about technology, isn't it? I feel like there are no excuses now for you not to invest in yourself, or to learn, or to educate yourself. It's all out there, more than probably when we were, growing up. You'd have to go to a library and encyclopedia, etc. Really old school. But now everything's at your fingertips, to develop and grow as a person.
Yeah, exactly. And technology is beautiful. I mean, I think we should use it. There's obviously the dark side of everything, but I mean, as long as we are mindful and aware, we can still take the best out of it.
Definitely, definitely. Trailblazer takeaway tips.
Mhm. Oh, that's a very interesting question. I think you should take everything one step at a time. This is something that I say to myself when I'm approaching a really scary task, whatever that may be. I think every journey starts with one step, as they say. So I think everything can be broken down into smaller, manageable tasks that you can actually accomplish. So that's one. Um, I would also say I'm a very impatient person, so I always say this to other people. There's a saying, "Festina lente," which is Latin for "make haste slowly." So that's just being my aunt is really spiritual, so she always says that every single person on this planet has one goal and one task to solve or whatever, and I think mine is to overcome my impatience. So I think doing 4 years of a PhD really just added on.
It's a very long time, yeah.
For everyone who sort of who finds this that it resonates, yes, just try to take things slowly as they come. Um,
Mm.
and then, as I said earlier, I think the final one would be to just make connections and just put yourself out there and just try to meet as many people as you can. I think everybody has a very rich experience and everybody has their own personal struggles, and you never know what other people are facing. So be kind and try to make connections, and yeah, it will all work out.
Oh, brilliant. Vanya, thank you so much for taking the time to share your story, talk about your journey. I think it's important for young women out there to hear from data scientists like yourself. It's an inspirational roadmap that you've sort of taken to get to where you are. And, it is, data science is sexy, and it should be celebrated as such. It's very important. So, yeah, thank you very much, Vanya.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm looking forward to catching up soon.
Of course, of course. So, to everyone, this has been the Trailblazers Experience podcast. As always, please remember to follow, subscribe, and share to the channel. We are on all streaming platforms, and look forward to seeing you on the next Trailblazers Experience podcast.